Episode 5, Shameless Name Dropping, and who's been doing a lot of lording, and why your break into Hollywood needs Star Trek, or else you're doing it wrong.
An in-depth look behind the curtain at Hollywood visual effects, the craft of storytelling, and the people who make magic for screens both big and small. Hosted by showbiz veterans and new media entrepreneurs, Sean Apple, PJ Foley, and Ephraim Patel.
Okay, so I think we had a little bit of old business from last week.
Yes, I wanted to make sure I got a shout out to Dave Smith.
And now, who's Dave Smith?
Dave Smith was a professor at Ball State and Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. And he was fantastic about placing people into jobs out in Los Angeles, which was a pretty phenomenal thing because for some reason, Dave Smith happened to have a lot of connections in Hollywood, which is an unusual thing in the middle of, Muncie, Indiana, that this person would. But he was fantastic. He was everybody's like a fantastic mentor. So I just want to give him a shout out. He's been he's the reason I got placed in the first place out in Los Angeles. So
he was the man that got you to move out west.
He is. And I got this is a whole other story, but I got a little bit of money from David Letterman too. But that's seriously, I did. That helped pay for rent. You
saw him on the street, and you're like, David.
I can get into
long
that.
Time viewer.
David Letterman went to Ball State University, and he has a bunch of scholarships.
Right.
And I won one of them. So.
You won one?
I won one, yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, was that your break?
Oh, are we going there?
Well, yeah, let's go there. I mean, one of the things we wanted to talk about this week was the idea of a break into whatever your chosen industry is, whether it be your big break or your first break.
It's interesting that I don't know that was, I guess in a way it was. It was the first time I felt like somebody of some import noticed, that I was out there. I don't know how much to talk about. There was a little bit of drama the year that I was doing it. And
doing what now? What
David Letterman offers a handful, at least at the time. Now he's put a lot of love into Ball State even since then. They have whole buildings named the Letterman Building and everything like that. But at that time, he had a scholarship specifically for C students because he was a C student, and the only way you could get that scholarship is if you had a C average.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's
That's
totally
awesome.
David Letterman, And then the other one he had was every semester? Maybe it was just once a year. He had the creative scholarship, and the deal was that you had to do something creative, do it entirely by yourself, and your name could not be associated with it, and your likeness could not be. You couldn't. The people who were judging it could not know who was behind it, essentially. So I did a short film or pieces of a short film on film, which was hard to do because at the time that it was not a film school. So I had a friend of mine who is an actor at Ball State. Excuse me. It's a sad story containing whiskey. No, I'm joking. The actor who ended up being in my short was a guy named Jeff Parise, and Jeff is out here. Jeff is acting, and Jeff was if you're a Mad Men fan, the very last episode, he is the spiritual yoga guru of the.
Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the last season of Mad Men, myself included.
But actually, Jeff had a great week because Jeff was the guy on the last episode of Mad Men, and he played a character on General Hospital, who General Hospital did a live episode, and his character was killed on live television. It was a good year.
Spoiler alert for those of you
or General Hospital fans. So anyway, I guess so Letterman has this thing, and there's first, second, third place, and so Jeff and I did this thing, and I should also add, with the help of a lot of really fantastic friends, a couple who are novelists now, published novelists, and
So I don't understand what it is that you were tasked to create.
it's entirely up to you. The point is that you do something creative.
Anything creative.
Anything. It could be anything.
No one should be able to tell that you did it.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the year that I participated, there is a student body. There's students on the panel who judge, and then I think a couple of professors. I think that was at the time. Anyway, long story short, too late. I came in second place, and the thing that won first place was a Shakespeare mime, and the guy who played the lead character in all of the Shakespeare miming was his project. So he won first place. So
Nice.
he kind of broke the rules, but whatever. But anyway, there was a little
But
bit
he
of
had face makeup on. I mean, you couldn't tell it was him. Oh, really?
yeah.
He broke the rules.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you
Creatively.
That's how you get in. Is you break the rules.
So actually.
Bring it home.
I actually have so basically there was a little bit of a kerfuffle, and his attorney ended up calling me, David Letterman's attorney, and said, don't sweat it, it's all good, Dave knows, everything's cool. And I'm like, oh, okay, and it was nice, it was a nice gesture, you know.
So wait, the lawyer was saying you should have won, and Dave
No,
knows.
he
or-
said no, there was no you should have won, but he said he basically said, we know the rules are, there's a little bit of politics going on. That was indicated to me. So, but that's actually a great sort of thing too. It's like, oh, politics. That was my first like, oh yeah, it's not all just, you know. But anyway, it was an incredibly nice gesture. He spent a lot of time on the phone with me, and I felt really good after that. And it didn't matter. It just was like, Dave's team reached out, you know. And so about a week later, I got a letter from David Letterman.
Nice.
And I have it. I can read it. You want me to read it?
Sure.
All right. It's right here. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
For those of you listening, Sean is stumbling across the room. He's clearly drunk. He's rifling through some papers, and he's zipping up his fly. Now he's sitting back down.
All right. Here it is. It's this is how old this is. It's on NBC Entertainment Stationery.
Whoa.
But it says, Dear Sean, I am pleased to congratulate you on the Ball State Telecommunications Scholarship. You must be excited by the challenge. Don't worry about your first runner-up placement. I heard you look swell in the evening gown competition. Best of luck. Sincerely, David Letterman.
Nice.
So, pretty cool. So, but part of second place was, part of the scholarship, or the scholarship was, you got that, and you got a certificate, and you got some money. And so, I think it was $3,000 or something like that. But that helped me move out to Los Angeles. So yeah, so that's
Some
that's
Letterman
that.
dollars.
That's right. That's
Now,
right.
that brings up an interesting question, which is what constitutes a break-in? Is it the
Right.
thing that validates you, that where that you are seen and someone says good job, or is it when you get an actual job?
It's interesting because I feel like it's because we're talking about this a little bit pre-show, but it's a weird sliding scale for me. When I was in my 20s, I thought it meant one thing. Now I'm in my 40s, it means something slightly different than it did back then. Because if my 20-year-old self could look at my 40-year-old self, breaks galore. Mm-hmm. But in a weird way, my 40-year-old self is a different person, really.
I think there's an idea of what a break is out there in the sort of in the culture,
Right.
the culture of humanity.
The one singular culture.
Yeah, because we're all the same. And it's basically, at least this is how I felt in my 20s. My big break is going to be when someone on high recognizes my talent and reaches a hand out and says, "Come on up. You're part of the club now."
Oh,
essentially.
right.
I mean, I'm being broad, but yeah, we're basically like, we recognize you as a talented individual, and now here we've laid out a career for you. Just sit in, strap in, and come along for the ride. We're going to pay you now to do your creative stuff, and it's going to be awesome.
So would you equate that with a break also means no more day job? Is that kind of part of the equation of the break?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the break is certainly, at very least, that you don't have to do some other
Right.
job to pay the bills. That now you can pay the bills and have some to spare, some flashing around money maybe. Like you can buy some shoes.
That's some serious flash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some flashy shoes, and you don't have and it's all doing the job that you love,
Gotcha. Okay.
whether
Yeah,
you're a singer, a musician, whatever.
I think, yeah, looking at it from being the person who wants the break, it's a moving target for sure. I remember thinking first was like, I guess I sort of thought backwards. At one point I was like, I don't care. I would like to make it to Hollywood, and I don't care if I work on the big fancy movies. I'll take the crappy movie of the week kind of job. That, that's cool because I'll be doing it. I'll be doing what I want to do. And then I sort of focus like, I kind of like to direct a TV series or a part of it or something like that. That will be my goal. And then it came to focus in on if I get good at the VFX, animation, computer, digital stuff, I could get a job doing that and work my way back through that funnel I just kind of created for myself.
From VFX
which is
to directing,
weird
essentially?
moving target, I know. But yeah, and so what I would have defined at that point as the big break is getting the paycheck to work on VFX day to day. And what that looked like in my mind ended up being pretty much what I got.
That's great. When an expectation or when the reality matches the
Right,
expectation.
but how the outside world sees that, I don't know.
I mean, I would call that a success, but I would call that a success, a break in anybody's life, in anything. If the reality matches up with your expectations, you're in a pretty good place.
But it also sounds like your goals weren't super rigid. Like you were like, I'd like to do this, and I'd like to do, like you throw out directing part of a TV series in there.
Yeah.
And,
But I mean, in a limited capacity, that sort of happened. And the thing is, though, I kind of thought I was focusing in on what would get me in the door, and then seeing a progression in my mind from that point forward. Like, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, learn more of this. And this is again from the beginner's mindset. The reality is every one of those steps exceeded my expectations because of just where the industry was at the time. Like the ladder has really big rungs, big leaps of steps. Like I was a supervisor within a year and a half. I was what they were calling a CG director a half year after that. The first gig I worked on was Star Trek. I thought that might be the last job I ever work on would be Star
That's
Trek.
impressive.
So the expectations are just totally out of whack.
It was almost like
But is it all just daisies and roses once you get that break? No, definitely not. The reality is also different in that case.
Did you have like, as you were sort of climbing the ladder, were you just like, oh, this is great, this is neat, or did you have this? Not that you didn't do this, but with this other thing, but was there an end game in mind? Like, I want this eventually to lead to X, or were you just having a ball? You were like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll do that next. I'll do that. Like, so you didn't have like this meta goal hanging above everything.
it was a journey, not a destination.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there's parts of me who, I don't know, again, like you were saying, you're a different person all the time, but I've always naturally gravitated toward management, team leadership kind of things. I mean, working even at Best Buy retail, I was always working for that, shift supervisor or whatever, department head kind of position. Just, I don't know. It's in my nature somehow.
You like to lord over people.
Yeah, as much as I can. And
I try to get out on the weekends and really lord over
I like
people.
doing a lot of lording. And, but yeah, so I definitely kept it kept that in my sights at all times. It's like, hopefully, I mean, right now I'm the new guy. There's so many things going on over my head that I don't understand any of it. I just got to make sure my frames render before this show airs. So I have my hands full. But eventually that becomes what happens on a day-to-day basis. That's just normal. That's baseline. It's like, yeah, it's a struggle, it's a push, or sometimes it's easy, and you love it when it's easy. You kind of despise it when it's more difficult. but you start to free up the bandwidth in your mind. It's like, okay, well now if I can get my work doing this, I could probably figure out how to get 3 or 5 guys, working together in a team. And I've been beaten up enough by the system and coached enough by geniuses that I can probably impart some of that knowledge and make sure that the work they're doing is up to snuff as well. So there you are, you're supervising. And that was really cool because then I started getting what felt like real money, especially considering I took a pay cut to come out here, which was, which I didn't really know or even care about at the time.
Which happens a lot, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't huge, but it was Michigan money versus LA money.
Right.
And that hurt a lot more than I thought it would.
Because of the standard, the cost of living. Is that?
Yeah. Something's crosswired here.
Yeah. We're working out headphone situations right now.
Yeah,
everybody's dialing.
Why is that me?
I don't know. Oh, that's me. Sorry, folks. We just had a little technical difficulties. Yeah, I think when folks are thinking about moving to Hollywood, to LA, there's this sense, that the industry it's a big institution, whether it be movies, television, music, fashion, whatever it is.
Right.
There is an establishment, and it's a machine, and you want to somehow get into that machine, and there's all kinds of power there, like the people that make the decisions, that hold the purse strings, that and you want to rise up out of whatever obscurity you feel like you're in and get noticed. If I can just get noticed, then I'll be invited into the club, and at least for me, and I know I'm making myself sound tremendously naive, but when I was in my 20s, I definitely felt like there was a destination. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to, at some point, I hope to arrive at my career.
Do you know what that looked like? Did you have a mental image? It's like, I'll have this and it'll be like this and I'll live here and da-da-da?
No, it had nothing to do with my lifestyle. It really had to do with being able to make films. I really just wanted to be able to make films. And it was such a struggle. It's such a struggle to raise money for independent films. It's easier now because there's so much access to equipment. And especially in LA, there's access to people and so forth. But, at the time, it was a struggle. You wanted to shoot on film. That's very, very expensive. The equipment is expensive. Everything's expensive. So just being able to make another film, whatever that was a struggle. Because you didn't want to pull out a VHS camcorder and try to shoot with that because it would just be garbage.
Right. And you have your aesthetic sensibility has the standard has gone higher and higher. You're like, it needs to look like the thing that I see in the movie theater. It can't look like the afternoon news or whatever, the morning show on whatever channel.
Right. You want to be taken seriously. If you're going to put the effort in, you want it to be something presentable.
Right.
So yeah, you want to shoot on film. So there's a baseline of cost, which is, if you're just struggling to pay the rent, the idea of raising money to
that's a luxury.
$50,000-$80,000 to go out and shoot a film, which is nothing, by the way.
Right.
It was very challenging. So the idea that I could have made a film that made some noise, and now I was looking at offers, or I was being paid to write a script, or a successful pitch or whatever, and things were moving, like where I guess I felt like I could arrive at a place where I knew I would be making films and I didn't have to worry so much, and I didn't have to, like we said, have the day job in order to just make ends meet while I'm trying to make a film.
I think that's what a lot of folks move to LA in hopes of doing, and some variation on that. But that idea, arguably, if you're moving to LA to get into entertainment in one way or the other, you're a creative person, and that probably means you have a lot of your own ideas, and that means I think the struggle that everybody has in Los Angeles is, how do you manifest your own ideas, and some forms are easier than others. Like, being a writer is a lot cheaper than being a filmmaker, because it's you and a computer, and the end result is that's the entirety of the thing. Whereas but I guess where I was going with that is the search for autonomy in developing and presenting your own idea is that's this word drives me crazy, but that is the journey. You know, is like how it's the steps of how do you be able to get to that point.
Well, I think that was the thing that I was missing the most in my 20s. And I don't want to characterize it like I was completely idiotic, because I wasn't. But I definitely, I was driven, and I just thought, I just got to get to that thing. Whatever that thing is, it could be 1,000 different things, but whatever that thing is, when I get there, I'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'll be there, and it won't be such a struggle. And what I've learned since then is that, like you say, I've had a number of breaks. I've had a number of times where I felt like, oh,
This is it.
oh wait, no, this is it. Oh wait, now this, because there was promise with each new thing, and
Right.
it seemed like doors were opening, and the world was opening up for me in different ways, and I'm like, great, but it's never, I've never fully been able to let go of the day job. That's never happened, but I'm still at it, and it's still for me. Finally, I think I realized that it's a journey.
Yeah.
That no matter what happens, even if I can let go of the day job, it's still going to be a journey.
Right. And the world is metaphysically conspiring against you. And like something's going to happen that's beyond your control. The company you're working for goes out of business. The
Right.
producer who's funding your film has a mental breakdown and nothing comes out, that goes to Hollywood jail, as they call it. There's a whole lot of things where if you're just standing still, things are going to move around you and take it away before you know it. So you have to always be growing, always looking, keeping your eye open. And it's a progress of breaks.
Right.
And
And you can have 10 projects like in development, and like I've got so
Yeah,
many plates
yeah.
spinning, and it's great, and they can all die.
And that's
yeah, and I'm also constantly surprised that even the littlest of things I kind of have out there. Every once in a while, someone comes and rings that doorbell, which is great. So opportunity knocks. Be sure to keep those plates spinning when you've got them.
Right.
That's right. That was the lesson that I learned. I don't want to jump too far ahead in terms of the progression here, but one of the things that I learned once I was, I had breached the gates, so to speak, was the many irons in the fire concept, because there is no certainty, and it's better to it's an odds thing. It's a casino thing. The more chips you have on the table, I'm not the casino. PJ, you're gonna have to help me out with the casino metaphor. But the other thing that used to be said a lot around an internship that I got, I don't know, should I go there or not? Should I? Do we want?
We'll save it.
Okay. But anyway, advice that I heard around the office all the time was strike while the iron is lukewarm, because by the time it's hot, it's too late.
Right.
That's
So-
a really good kind of point. Yeah.
Well, that's that whole plate spinning thing. Like, have the plate spinning so that when it's what is it? Success is when opportunity meets preparation.
Right.
So that to me is like, you've got the plate spinning, you've got the things, you're developing projects, you're writing whatever. Even if you don't know where they're going to go,
That's right.
a door is going to open at some point, even if it's just ajar. Someone might be like, hey, do you have anything that's kind of comedic, or do you have something that's sort of a horror or whatever? And you'd be like, yes, it's not done, but I got this plate that's spinning right now. You want to check it out? And that was I think a place where that I really fell down at a certain point in my career, where the iron was hot, or at least lukewarm. It was at least lukewarm, but one could argue that it was hot, and I just didn't have any plate spinning.
Oh, to leverage that placement that you had when you were hot, you weren't able to leverage that in quite the way. Is that what you mean?
I
Or-
think if I had had more things in play, but I'd come from the independent film world, and it was really for me very much a focus on one thing, get this one film done, and it was so all encompassing. I mean, it took everything I had, and when I got it done, I was like, okay, now I got to recover, and then once I'm recovered, okay, what's the next thing, right? So it was really a one thing at a time.
And
this. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and in one of those, here's some grumpy grandfatherly advice. As a VFX guy, artist, I shouldn't keep saying guy. That's so wrong and incorrect these days.
Artist guy.
Artist guy, yeah.
Is
yeah.
it incorrect to call yourself a guy? Should we call myself a gentleman?
I'm saying anyone getting into the VFX art
Oh, I
field
gotcha. With you.
should prepare themselves for some downtime, because the work ebbs and flows, and layoffs are I mean, it's part of the job. It's
It
gig
is.
to gig usually. It's not a long period of time that you're working.
So have
you-
hobbies is what you're saying. Have
Not
hobbies.
And
well,
have those hobbies make money.
definitely have some hobbies that keep you mentally sane, but also you can use that downtime. Be sure to use that downtime
Yes.
to get those plates spinning, to get ideas flowing, to get other opportunities off the ground.
Now that's assuming that the person in question wants to do something outside of visual effects. Like maybe they want to develop their own show. Maybe they want to do a podcast. Maybe they want
yes,
to,
but also just, or maybe get a demo reel that shows that you are able to do things that you're not doing at your day job. Maybe you're just there rotoing, but really you're great at really great at rigging creatures and or design or something like that.
Right.
So expanding your
Continue.
skill set
Yeah,
outside
continue.
of yeah.
Well, I've said that too about actors. I have a lot of actor friends who, they've come to me asking to cut their reel, and they lament that they don't have any better clips of them acting. They've got, here's a walk on me on Gilmore Girls or whatever,
Right.
these various TV shows or movies or some independent stuff, but never any scenes of them acting. And I'm like, get a friend who has a camera.
That's right.
Either write a scene or pick a scene that would be fun for you to do as a monologue or whatever, and just shoot it. Go out in someone's backyard and shoot something, make sure it sounds good and looks good, and just nail it and have that be the centerpiece of your reel.
And now in the era of YouTube, casting directors are even saying they're more likely to go online and look for people on YouTube than they are the old traditional ways. So like if you happen to be an actor, go make YouTube videos because they are looking.
If you're one of these young hotshot producers or associate producers, you probably went to film school with visions of YouTube in your head the whole time. You might have a whole bunch of faces and names already in your head that when it comes across that time, you'll know who to look up on YouTube. There you go.
And one of the things, there was just and not just, but there was a casting director panel, I think at South by Southwest, and they were talking about what gets an actor a job. Now this is an audience full of actors too. They're like, help us. And it turned out that 7%, our talent only accounts for 7% of the criteria on which they hire somebody. 7%. The rest are other things that are oftentimes out of your control, But what they all universally said is that they are looking for personalities that come through on camera, if you're an actor, that demonstrate that you have a charisma on camera, even if you're not a trained actor. And I thought that was so interesting because that's a shift. They're actually looking, it's getting more and more dialed in who presents well on camera. And that doesn't necessarily mean who's the best looking person, but that means who has a lot of charisma, who's funny, who's what, And I thought, boy, this is really getting distilled. It's getting very granular on what presents for a visual medium, and that might be completely opposite of what works for stage in live theater and that kind of thing.
Well, that just reminds me of the debates between Nixon and Kennedy,
yeah.
where Kennedy did so much better. It was the first televised debate, and it became clear that was a really important skill.
Well, people who heard it on the radio thought Nixon won.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now, like, whether or not, if you're going to act in a film, you may also need to promote that film.
And also
So-
work on you as a brand. And, actors, I know a lot of actors that makes them cringe because it's like, I'm not a brand, I'm an artist. And that's true. But the reality of at least filmed entertainment as an actor is you cannot separate the two. You're asking somebody to point a camera at you. You cannot not consider that because your competition is so stiff that if you want to make a living at this, you will have to put that into your internal calculus and figure out how do you best present what you have, and there's an unprecedented opportunity to find that because I don't think you just turn on a camera and you just are. Some people luck out and they just have a thing that they can't get away from it. But other people, it takes a while for them to develop that. And if you have a smartphone, it's unbelievable. If you have a smartphone and everybody has access to YouTube, that is an unbelievable gift to be able to hone that and refine that and show your friends and develop and develop and develop. I mean, you could not have done that, 25 years ago. It just did not. I mean, a VHS camera and pass around a tape, I suppose, would be the version of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know where we got off on this tangent, but
Have a hobby that grows into what you want to do.
Right.
And your hobby might be it's interesting because it might flip. The hobby actually might end up being the more powerful career move.
It's an indication that it's something that you love. If it's a hobby anyway, and a lot of people start hobbies thinking there's no way I can do this professionally, but then it turns out that there's a niche or there is a thing, and it blossoms.
Right.
As a total aside, I do know people who got into VFX as just a job. It wasn't a dream or anything. It's like, oh, it sounded interesting, I'm doing it. And they go on to do other things. And the part of me that wanted so badly to be into the VFX industry is just, my mind is blown. It's like, you worked all this hard and you're here and you're doing work and you're getting paid and you say when you're getting laid off you're never coming back.
Now you want to be a dog groomer? What?
Yeah. You want to cut hair?
You just couldn't imagine all of that effort and blood, sweat, and tears to be like, I got other options. Or what's that scene or what's that line? Done with Thimbles. Do you remember that? What was the adaptation?
No.
The guy kept changing. He would do something. He would become obsessive compulsive about a thing.
Right.
And then she's like, so what happened? He's like, done with Thimbles. He collected thimbles. That's all he did. It was an obsession.
It was turtles, I think.
Oh, was it turtles?
Done with turtles.
Done with turtles. Well, how come like you need another reason? I just love how that just I'm done with visual effects.
Yeah.
That's a great movie, by the way. Adaptation.
It's fantastic.
Spike Jonze.
It's a great movie about the problems of writing, not being a writer, but the actual act of writing.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Oh,
on that.
brilliant. Nicolas Cage, one of my favorite roles of his.
Yep. And also Nicolas Cage.
Playing his brother.
They're both in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just a little bit more about the idea of the break. We were talking about how there's this idea of the machine, and if I could just get noticed by the machine and arriving at a career versus it being a journey. That idea of those machines, those industries, that for a long time had been the case. The power structure was, and still is to a large degree, these large companies that determine, like the record companies determine who gets heard and who gets produced and what albums are released. But as we all know, the music industry has gone through a huge paradigm shift, just to use an overused term. And now you can get your music out there online. You can release your albums online. Even established musicians are releasing albums for free. And the music industry, there isn't the same power structure as there used to be. And there's a lot of different ways in now with the internet. And there's the same with other forms of media, as we've been saying. But the idea that these big machines will offer you your big break is still something that's very much peddled. I mean, when you see these shows like, I don't know, America's Next Top Model, Project Runway, all these different things.
The Voice and all that.
The Voice, yeah.
It's like you get plucked from obscurity and then you don't have anything to worry about ever again. That's sort of the fantasy.
Exactly. And I don't follow those shows enough to know if any of those people actually went on to have brilliant careers. I'm sure there's been one.
Wasn't Kelly Clarkson?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
That's fine too.
It happens. I mean, it does happen. It's.
I think it's the exception and not the rule.
Oh, for sure.
For the people, people who win.
There's so many people who go through that ringer and actually do deserve a break, and you never hear from them again.
I also think too. I think those shows are a little unfair because they, and this is I think part of what we're talking about. It creates this illusion that. Becoming successful creatively is about that one moment,
right?
And I think the counter to that is if you freeze up or you don't do well on that moment or it's not your best day or whatever, the corollary there is like, then just scrap all of it. And any artist knows that is counter to everything that art is. Art is a progression. It's a development. It's like. It's not a lottery. You're not throwing a dart, and the shows treat art in that way. And I think that does a real disservice to people who really do want to become a great singer and want to do that. The contest nature of those makes me cringe.
And even the people who come in second and they're amazing. And
Right.
they're like, wow, they sang that song so well. And they're like, no, you didn't get it. And they walk off with like, I'm just glad I had the opportunity. I'm going to still keep trying. I'm going to go home, be with my family, and I'm going to keep singing. You're just like, oh, that's good. Good for them. They're never going to make it. But, it's sad.
Well-
You even if you are think the way that we do, it's easy. It's hard not to watch those shows and think, yeah, but you blew it.
Well, and the thing is like that's clever writing and clever editing, because that's the impression we're supposed to get, which I believe. So we're participating in that person not ever doing what they love again. I think that is so. Henry Rollins, do you know who Henry Rollins is? Henry Rollins had he was talking about, I think it was in this context, he was talking about the reality shows. And he was like, you want to get good? You want to do your thing? Go play 10,000 shows in shitty clubs. You'll be fantastic after that. And he's right. Nothing beats experience like that. Not one dumb contest. Your whole life is not about one contest, And also too, I could go on about that, but I shall not.
Okay, so now that we've explored the concept of getting your break, let's talk about how each of us moved from relative obscurity to definite obscurity, doing what we love.
Yes,
medium to total.
Medium obscurity, doing what we love in Hollywood. PJ, I think when we last left you last week, you had helped your buddy Q, who had gotten the job that you wanted. You'd helped him move to LA, hoping that he would get you the job, and you were in LA. And I think, did he get you the job?
Interesting twist.
Boom, boom, boom.
So, it might sound like I moved out here with Q, who will get on this show at some point. That guy got some insight. But yes, I was in fact riding shotgun, helping him get across the country, because he did have the job. He was confirmed. He left a bunch of stuff with his wife, and she's kind of packing the house, and they're planning on moving out. I'm getting in the car with my VHS tape, which I had just burned off of my MPEG-1 card and to my tape deck, and very bleary-eyed, and it's crazy what I had to go through to update my tape. Because if you remember, the last episode was we talked about the only feedback I had was we'd like to see more
From your demo reel.
From my.
I like
demo
how
reel.
that voice was British.
A really poor British. I didn't warm up my accents.
Whose voice was that?
That would
Death
be.
Star.
We'll find out.
That would, yeah. So, anyways, we almost run over some rabbits. We drive across the desert, and we get to town at the really crazy hour, go to a hotel. Friday morning, that was a Thursday night. Friday morning, we go to Foundation for Q to get oriented, or maybe he just goes. I think he just went, and I'm just sitting there doing nothing in strange town with no car and
Gripping your VHS tape.
yeah, pretty much.
Precious.
And yeah, so he goes in and he's getting prepped and everything, but then they somehow, whatever, the details don't really matter, but they do dump us into the company condo, and there was two bosses. There's Ron and there's Paul. They're both Englishmen, and they're running this company. It's a bit famous because they're revolutionizing CG for TV. They're winning Emmys, that kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, we'll talk to your friend PJ on Monday, and come on in, and I'll let everyone know what's going on. And kind of throw our luggage in the room, and the last thing I hear is, see you on Monday, and the door slams. And Q and I are standing there like, well, here we are with no money. We don't know where we are, really. We don't know what we're doing. We have a whole weekend of this. We don't have our computers, which, as a geek, you need. There's no smartphones. There's no tablets. We're just like, yeah. All right, who has a deck of cards?
There is Magic Mountain, though.
Yeah, but we were broke. And so Monday comes around eventually, and Paul isn't even there in the office. And now the lead up to this was, I know this is a creative industry. I know that I'm being judged mostly by probably my demo reel and how I present myself. So I debate for a long time. I brought a shirt and a tie. And I knew, looking, I saw everybody. I know I don't need to wear a tie, but I'm like, should I wear the tie? Because why?
It's all coming down to this decision.
Yeah,
the
but
tie?
I had nothing else to think about. Like I said, all weekend we were just, isolated as far as it felt like. We weren't in LA. We're up in Valencia, which was still being built. There wasn't a whole lot up there. And so I eventually come to the conclusion I'm going to wear that tie. I'm not quite sure why. But now it's famous for me having done that.
So
I go in
you
there.
clip it on, and then you go in.
And, Q was being showing his desk, getting ready to work. He gets assigned to work on a Batman animated movie. They're doing a bunch of sequences in 3D CG. Think of Futurama, how they did that. Looks a cell look, 3D thing. I think it's very cool. For me, that's like the dream job. So now my jealousy is just burning. Like, I want to be doing that.
If I murder Q, maybe.
I could
No
just
one will
swap in.
know.
If it wasn't for the tie, I could just take a seat. But now everyone knows me as the guy with the tie. So there's little murmurs going on, like, who's the guy with the tie? Why is there a guy with the tie?
Are we being audited?
Yeah, it's like
That's
it's
the
like,
only reason a tie would ever be in a visual effect.
Does the manager know there's like a salesman here? What exactly? Is he going to sell his bottled water? But eventually it comes to pass that, nobody knows that I'm supposed to be there. The guy who knew didn't show up at all that day.
And meanwhile,
so,
Q's just like, whatever, I'm doing my
he's
visual
like,
effects.
I've got a mouse
Good
to
luck.
click over here. And so finally I find probably Jeff Sheets or Emil Smith. They're old, back the old guard. And I say, I talked to Paul and he's supposed to have told somebody that I'm here to apply for a job.
You just said, Paul said to hire me right
He
away.
said, I like to take any rug in the place.
Ties the visual effects house together.
And so, I finally, it's almost the end of the day, I think, and finally get to pop in my new revised tape in front of Ron, and he's just like, yeah, okay, yeah. All right. So, what's your schedule like? I'm like, well, I gotta actually get on a plane and go back to LA, or go back to Michigan from LA. And he's like, oh, all right. So, all right, let me think about this. All right. So I get on the plane and I'm back in Michigan, and I, exhausted, go back to my day job.
What was
working
the
at
day
computers.
job?
I was doing a big computer support thing for an advertising agency.
Okay.
So help desk essentially, but everything that entails. That was, it was pretty cool. Very corporate. Worked with good people. But yeah, very computery. So I'm just waiting around, and I'm only in contact with Q, and he's like, well, yeah, it sounds like it. And then
Sounds like yes.
you probably have a job. Probably.
Q, it sounds like you're at a party. Yeah, LA is great, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, all right. And then suddenly it becomes, when can you get out here? I'm like, what? Even when I hired people, it's always like that. It's like, I don't know, get in here. It's always like that. So it's like, when can you get out here? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I got to quit my job and pack my stuff. And so, okay. 2 Mondays from now? 2 Mondays from now. Okay. And then that translated to Monday. How come you're not here? I need another week. But long story short, get on another airplane, leave behind a car, all my belongings, semi-packed up, ready for other people to deal with that, and go to LA with a little tearful mom there at the airport when you could still walk to the terminal with people getting on airplanes. And she, I had her like arranging all these things to come my way later. It's like, I just remember to ship this and ship that, and get into the work, not wearing a tie this time, and don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm kind of thinking, oh, I'll do the Batman animated thing. That's going to be so cool. And run into Ron Thornton. He's like, let's put you on Star Trek. And
Just like mind blown.
why? what do you like to do? And at the time, I was.
Trek.
Anything.
I don't know why this just comes up then. What do you primarily do? Are you modeling? Are you animating? And at the time, I was primarily modeling. And
were
I
you
said animating.
Because you were burnt out? You were
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just
that
like,
was
oh, yeah.
smooth, actually. It was very clever.
I mean, yes, I was pretty good with the modeler and modeling things, but I didn't feel like I had a super duper aptitude toward either one. So I'm just like, yeah, the effects and animating.
Which one pays more? I'll do that.
Yeah. And so they hooked me up with Rob Bonchun and Mojo as my supervisors. They alternated episodes, and the episodes themselves alternated between two effects houses, and I had to suddenly learn everything
Nice.
all over again. Yeah.
Oh,
I
now
mean,
that you're in a production
yeah,
frame?
I mean, yeah, it's like working with edits, working with storyboards, working with sensibilities of the show. And
But you were being
oh.
paid. You got to learn on the job.
Yeah, I
know-
am now being paid. So that is break numero 1.
That has all the great trappings of a break because a move is involved. Your mom seeing you off at the airport.
Yep.
Going off to Hollywood, and really Star Trek is your first gig. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
I know.
That's
It's
pretty spectacular.
Still to this day, it's kind of like that's part of my own little like remember the cool things about your life list.
And all
That is-
downhill from there.
Yeah.
But that is everything a break should be.
I suppose
think.
so,
You
yeah.
know, it's like got all the good stuff about a break.
A break should always have Star Trek.
That's right. If your break does not have Star Trek, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it
I
right.
was
Not a
like
break.
transported into another world. Am I right?
Oh,
Am I right?
He'll be here all day.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, he'll be here all day.
Settle in.
So, do we get a next chapter out of either of you guys?
Yeah.
We got some room left on this tape.
Okay, since we're doing this to tape,
17 terabyte hard drive. Oh, well, the tuck forever.
let's see. When I'm trying to remember where I left off last, I think I was still in Maine doing independent films.
Figuring out After Effects at
That's
your
right.
day job.
So was just starting to dabble in visual effects. Did my first short with visual effects, and around that time, I was starting to get a little bit of notice. There was a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Exposure, and it was all about showcasing short films that they liked. The short film 405 with the
Oh, yeah.
the airplane.
Those were two Foundation guys.
Yeah,
one.
Or was it one?
Bruce Brandit, I think is his
Actually,
name.
no. Yeah, he was not a Foundation guy.
Oh, I thought he
I don't
was.
think ever.
Oh, was he? He was
might have
who was
freelanced,
Who was the
but-
competitor?
No, he was. He,
was
might
work-
have been at Station X.
He was working on Voyager, I think. at
Oh,
the
okay. So
time.
he was at Digital Muse.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Bruce, I'm sorry if we got that wrong. But their short 405 aired on the Sci-Fi Channel at the same time as one of my shorts aired on the same episode, and that was a short called Pennyweight with Ray Wise.
Right.
And when the Sci-Fi Channel guys, they said, look, we want to do an interview with you, but so we're going to send a camera crew up to Maine, and we're going to interview you, but it'd be great if we could see you doing something cool. Are you doing something cool film-related? And it's like, actually, I've just been doing visual effects on this. The first time I did visual effects was this short called They Came to Attack Us. And I was wrapping that up, and I was like, well, we're gonna premiere that short soon and try to raise some money for the next film. So they said, okay, great, we'll come on the day that you're premiering the short. So it was a crazy day of like wrapping up the short, trying to finish the cover design, trying to finish designing all these postcards, getting printing, getting the location. Oh, we've got to get catering over there, and we had a band coming, and just like all the stuff for the premiere. Meanwhile, the Sci-Fi crew was just following us around from the beginning of the day. Literally, we started with haircuts. Haircuts all the way through to that evening, the premiere. And it was kind of crazy, but it was very validating. And then they saw us premiere this 7-minute sci-fi short, which they're like, oh, and now we want to play that one on our show too. So
That's fantastic.
yeah. So when they showed Pennyweight and they showed our little package that they put together, and they're like, and upcoming episode we'll show you this short too. So that short also got played on the show. So I'm like, oh, it was very validating, right? And right around that time, my buddy and I, who were making films, we made contact with J.J. Abrams. And someone we knew his wife, and we were able to just get an in via I think snail mail or email. I can't remember. But we made our first introduction and said we'd love to send you, one of our films. So we sent him Pennyweight, and he called us in our production office. He called us from the set of Alias. He was on the first season of Alias. It hadn't aired yet. And he was like, my wife and I watched Pennyweight last night. We loved it. We were laughing. I was like, oh, this is awesome. My buddy flew out to visit the set of Alias. He came back, and we had all these scripts of episodes and VHSs, and we're watching things before they aired. And we're like, oh, what do we do to get on JJ's radar? Do we write a spec script for the show? Do we know so much about the show? What do we do? And we kept coming back to this idea of making fun of it, which that was just our sense of humor, was just to poke fun and spoof things. And finally we decided, let's just make a spoof of Alias, a 15-minute thing where we'll just spoof one full episode of the show, because it's a fun show, but it's also kind of ridiculous. It's silly. So we just took the silliness and just amped it up. And my buddy played Sidney Bristow, Jennifer Garner's part. So he was in a wig, and that just made it even more ridiculous. Right. And we sent that off to JJ. He knew something was coming, but he didn't know what. So we sent him the film, and I guess he went nuts for it and sent copies to the whole cast and crew, and then sent thank you letters to all of our cast and crew. And that was great. That was the moment where I was like, okay,
this is it.
Validation achieved. I am moving to Hollywood. Now, I still was not making any money doing this. I still had the day job. But I felt emboldened enough to make the move. So with no prospects for work, no idea where I was going to land, I just packed it up and drove cross country with my girlfriend at the time. And that was the send off for the relationship. She wasn't moving out with me. This was sort of, we decided it was the end. We would end amicably, and she would drive out with me, and it was bittersweet, to be sure. So land in LA, and I did know one guy from Maine who had a post company in LA, and I thought, well, I can get a job with Chuck as an editor. And so I looked him up, and he brought me in. He's like, well, I really don't have any editing work. And I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? Yeah. The living situation still hadn't been worked out. So anyway, he said, well, can you do graphics? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just starting to. And so he threw me onto a system I'd never worked on before, because I knew After Effects. Knew in quotes. I still didn't know how to rotoscope or track or any of the sort of basic things you do in After Effects.
Turn it on.
I knew how to manually track and manually rotoscope one frame at a time because I didn't know what I was doing. But he threw me on the Avid DS, which has a whole node-based, just to get nerdy, a node-based graphics system, which is really almost no one seems to use. But I learned that, and that was my first experience with rotoscoping, like with proper masks and the whole bit. And so I started to learn on the job, and that was the day job. And for 6 months, that's what I did. And I learned a lot about doing 2D graphics at that place. And that was 2G Digital Post. The work that we were doing primarily was SMP work for features. Basically, when a feature goes to cable TV or to airlines, it has to go through standards and practices to remove any bad words or offensive images, and they can be anything from the obvious to the very, very subtle. And sometimes it means cutting out whole scenes or looping in dialogue, like saying "mamma jamma" instead of something else.
Really, that's the replacement?
Mamma jamma. Yeah, that was
Mamma jamma.
Me, Myself, and Irene, which had a lot of profanity in it. All that, that. And mother effing this and mother effing that became mamma jamma this and mamma jamma that.
Mamma jamma.
It's ridiculous. We didn't make those choices.
But like, what do you call that? Phonetically or whatever that.
Yeah, it kind of looked like it matched the lips.
And
mamma jamma.
This is what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps.
What?
Mamma jamma.
Okay.
That was a Big Lebowski substitution.
Okay.
Where was that house?
That was actually located in the Santa Monica airport in one of the...
Oh, was it? In one of the hangars?
One of the hangars.
Oh, wow.
Was this had been converted into this office. And it was really cool. Like, it was a really neat space. And they had very well outfitted, like, it technically was run very well. And so I learned a ton. And, my job was to remove visually offensive things, like there might be you can see someone's nipples are erect through their shirt, like paint out Winona Ryder's nipples, make them look smooth, or
Sorry, Winona.
or remove gore from a gunshot wound, or in some cases it was corporate logos. Again, me, myself, and
right.
Irene, there was this whole scene with a Coke machine, and so I had to replace the Coke machine, all the images of Coke, and it couldn't be Coca-Cola Red and all this. It was actually extremely challenging, some of the work.
I bet, yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun. And 6 months into living in LA, my buddy, my filmmaking partner, who was also out here, he called me and said, "Hey, my mom let me know that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are doing that contest again, that Project Greenlight thing that had happened maybe a year prior. I'd heard about it, I hadn't seen it." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I think my mom mentioned that was happening too, because they see that Affleck guy is I'm like, are they talking about the duck or the actor? I'm not sure."
Moms love him.
Moms love him. He's just so adorable. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. He's like, "Oh, well, let's just try, because to enter you have to make a video about yourself. So let's just get together and see what we can do." So we did that. We entered. And it was kind of fun to make the video, and then we kept getting pushed into each new round. There was a number of rounds in the contest, and by the time it was, we're up the top 50 directors, I think, because there was a writing contest and there was a directing contest, and we were obviously entering the directing contest. You also have to enter a couple of 3-minute clips from films you've produced. So gave them one from Pennyweight, one from that science fiction short. Actually, both shorts that played on the Sci-Fi Channel. We took clips from those, and
That's great too, because those already had, you had had some success with those, so it looks good.
And they also lend themselves to, if you have to pull just a snippet out of it, they both had clear places that were fun. So we did that. And when we got to the top 50, then you have to direct a scene. They send you a script that makes no sense. It's like 3 pages long. It makes no sense. And you have to shoot that scene and make it make sense, but you can't change any of the dialogue. So the dialogue verbatim, you decide who's saying it, what the context is, what the situation is. You can visually do whatever you want, but the dialogue has to be in order, exact, nothing added, nothing subtracted, except you can change, if you want to, up to 3 words. So that was the challenge. And so we sat down and we looked at it and we were like, "Oh, here are the 10 obvious choices, that we're going to avoid. And then, like, what are some more zany things?" And we came up with something that just made us giggle. And so we decided to do that. Because if it made us laugh, that was usually the barometer for us. Like,
That was enough.
With the Alias thing, like, "Oh, that makes us laugh. Let's do that."
Right.
So this idea made us laugh, and so we decided to do it. And we got Ray Wise, the actor, to come and play a role in it. And the top 10 directors who were doing these scenes, we all got a little video camera, like this little handy cam, something that could fit in your palm. It was almost like a GoPro, really tiny. And we thought, okay, we're supposed to shoot with this, right? Because why else would they send us this camera along with the script? So we shot with that, and it looks like you would expect, a little mini DV camera. Anyway, we send it in, and they fly out the top 10 contestants to Sundance to announce the winner. And you have like 5 or 6 days of hanging out in Sundance and different events and basically just building the anticipation. And the whole time I was just like, I want to see what the other directors did. I want to see these other scenes.
What's the competition?
It was killing me.
Right.
Because there's so many things you could do. I wanted to see how ours measured up. I was feeling really good about ours. And we kept kind of pestering the folks who were running the program. We're like, "Come on, let's see it." So they finally said, "Okay, we have to narrow down the top 10 to the top 3. So we're going to do that over the course of these next few days, and we're going to let the other 7 go." And they did that, and then they said, "Okay, we're going to show you the top 3. We're going to sit you guys down in a room. We're just going to show you." And so I'm like, "Oh, awesome."
All of the filmmakers together, just you guys, like, was it done independently?
This was 12 years ago. I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
I think it was all of us together, and I think the writers as well.
Okay.
But I can't be sure. But I remember there was a room full of people. I think it was everyone involved. All the finalists were there, and they showed the top 3 films, and I was horrified because the other 2 films were beautiful.
Oh,
Beautiful. They did not use their little mini DV camera. One of them shot on clearly on 35 millimeter film.
Wow.
It looked like an episode of The X-Files, and I mean that in the best way. It was set in an asylum. It was moody. It was gritty. The actors were like these right out of central casting, like really cool stuff. And then the other one was shot super 35. It was a period piece.
A period piece?
Set in during the assassination of JFK.
good God.
It was, I mean, they had period props and sets and costumes, and it had crane moves and all these extras. I'm like, how expensive? Like, how much did you spend?
Hundreds
and
of
where
thousands
did you
of
get
dollars
the
for-
money?
Right.
We were haggling with, the guy who let us shoot, and we needed a theater space to shoot in. The whole thing took place in one theater, and we
Right.
were haggling with him because we only had a few $100s. And meanwhile, these people are spending thousands, many thousands on these things. I'm like, we're done.
Right.
This was
right.
fun.
That's it.
This was
Right.
fun while it lasted. And then in the end, it turns out that we won.
It turns out.
It turns out it was the one on the left. No, they had a big event at the film festival. It was one of the evening events. We got brought in, and there was a big crowd of people. It was like being brought into a warehouse that had been converted into a dance club. And
Gotcha.
it was just and everyone was like, everyone's got their, it looks like that everyone was there for a rave. Like, no one was there to hear about Project Greenlight.
Right.
I think word had gotten out that Matt and Ben were going to be there. So these were all the people who were like, celebrity.
Oh, right.
They could give a shit about us.
Right.
So we're all ushered to the front of this massive throng towards the stage. And Matt and Ben come out, and they're like, we're going to announce the winner. But first, we're going to play you the films. So I'm like, okay. So they play
This
the
is
films.
the moment of truth where you're like,
And you're hearing the audience response for each one. It was like the audiences were starting to really get into these films. And then they played ours, and it felt so good to hear an audience react to this little thing we shot on mini DV.
Right.
They didn't seem to care that it wasn't shot on film. They were just sort of taken in by the weirdness, the comedy. It was kind of comedic and dark at the same, and kind of horror, some horror elements in there. And they ate it up, and I was like, "That's awesome!" And then they announced the winners, and we won.
do you think we've talked about this, but do you think that they didn't know until they heard? Was the audience reaction going to decide? So they knew it.
They knew.
There had to be
There was
enough.
a whole. I'm sure they had a whole criteria for
Okay.
why we were chosen.
Okay.
And and who knows what that criteria was, but I think it was definitely decided before we got there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
It's also validating for them that you guys got a big response because they're like, oh, so
I'm
they were
sure.
like, good, because that's who we voted for. Or that's who we, yeah.
Yeah, I think they would have been fine either way. I mean, they're just doing their thing.
Right,
I don't think
right.
they were the audience. Like I said, just seemed like a bunch of people out for a rave and celebrity spotting. I don't think it was really the audience of our peers.
Right, the people that would go, right, that were
Yeah.
there to see. Gotcha.
But it was a lot of fun, and I know this has nothing to do with visual effects really. Although I did use visual effects in our initial video to sort of get us into the contest, and that got a lot of attention. And then I used visual effects for our scene that
Right.
that our final video there. So it definitely came in handy. It's always been gone hand in hand with my filmmaking, and all the times that I've learned more about visual effects has always been about expanding my ability to do different things in my films.
Meaning like, oh, now I can do this. I couldn't do this before, but now that I have this skill set, now that's a possibility for my film. Like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Like when I wanted to learn 3D, it was specifically for things I wanted to do in my films.
Gotcha.
Like I had a film project in mind. I'm like, I'm going to need to know how to do this. I better learn it. So, and usually in those cases, I would say, okay, well, I should really shoot a test. Like, and that test becomes a short film.
Right.
And usually it takes on a life of its own. That first short, the one that played on the Sci-Fi Channel, that was a test. That was
cool.
like, let's just shoot a test this weekend, and then we should give it a story. Okay, let's come up with something silly. And we came up with something silly, and then we did it. And the fact that it had a story rather than it just being a collection of shots that didn't mean anything, it enabled it to take on a life outside of it just being a visual effects test. And I naturally put in more love into the making of it because it was a fun little beginning, middle, and end.
That is a huge piece of information. You just dropped a huge piece of information just now.
Should I drop the mic? It's kind of on the stand.
Boom. How do I drop something that's stick?
Oh.
But take note of that, everybody. The story is the king twice. You guys, I mean, in other words, so the Project Greenlight, you were up against, Lawrence of Arabia or whatever. I'm joking, but like shots, the spectacular, epic, production quality. You guys shot on the device that was handed to you, and you guys still won. And I'm guessing it largely I'm sure there was a multitude of reasons why it won, but the story was king. It didn't matter that the other things were shot on film. The thing on video won. Because it ultimately, there was a narrative that drew you in to it. You know what I mean? And that's such an important lesson that I keep learning over and over again. I've been out here for a long time. It's that the story, if the story is compelling, you can shoot it on duct tape.
Yeah.
It's nice if it's not shot on duct tape, but like if the story is rocking, you're in.
And that first VFX test that I shot, that I decided to make a story that ended up becoming a short that I premiered, that ended up, as a result of that, going onto the Sci-Fi Channel, which ended up then being part of the entry into Project Greenlight. That one short that had all that life, $50, shot on SVHS.
That's unbelievable. And your phone looks better than that now.
It does. And at the time, I was like, you know what? SVHS sucks.
Right.
But it's the camera we have available to us right now. Let's just do it. Let's not worry about trying to make that part of it better. Let's just shoot it, have fun, and it really had such a life after that. So
but in defense of SVHS, it's the super version of VHS. So
super.
It is super.
One of the things can I throw in a quick question?
Oh, sure.
Because you threw a little bomb in there earlier before you had made your break, and and then we had Ray Wise. Like, Ray Wise is a big name. So explain. So you had a little taste of Hollywood when you guys were making your film in Maine, right? When you hired Ray Wise.
Oh, sure. I mean,
not that that's your big break per se, but that's a big deal.
It is a very big deal, and it was huge then. And Ray's a good friend as a result of that experience. In my 20s, I spent all that time making films, and this was pre-visual effects for me. And the whole time just feeling like I was living in a sort of remote satellite region, far from the industry as you could possibly get, because I didn't really consider Boston or New York the industry. It really was Hollywood. So how do I get there? I don't know. But I had been an enormous fan of Twin Peaks. And so when I was writing my first feature screenplay with my buddy, there was a role, sort of this good guy, bad guy, like a bad guy who really thinks he's doing good, but he's twisted. And as we were writing it, we're like, who could play this role? And I was just like, Ray Wise from Twin Peaks. And he was like, yeah, that'd be great. So even before we were finished the script, like I think that same day we're like on the phone calling the information in California, trying to find Ray Wise. And after like an hour of making different calls, we found his manager.
Oh,
and we're on the
wow.
phone with his manager. And this was before cell phones. So we're like
impressive.
rotary phoning
Right.
it. And we're like, oh, hello. And we said, we have the script and we'd love to have Ray be in the movie. We're independent filmmakers. And he's like, well, I don't know.
Let me sit you down, son.
I don't know you guys from Adam, but, when you're done your script, send it to me. I'll read it. Which was a big deal that he would read it. And he's like,
you're talking to Ray or you're talking to his manager?
his manager.
Okay, right.
I didn't talk to Ray for years after that.
Right.
He's like, if I like it, I'll give it to Ray. So we're like, okay, thank you. And so we still had to finish the script. And we did. We finished it. We sent it off to Ray's manager, who read it, passed it along to Ray. Ray read it. And we heard always through his manager, oh, Ray liked it. And he's willing to do it. We got a letter of intent saying, basically, if you get the money for this, Ray will do it.
Right.
We're awesome. Now we just got to get the money.
Well, that's filmmaking 101. You got to have the actor, but you can't get the actor unless you have the money. It's that whole
Well,
back
the
and forth.
big lesson learned there, it being my first feature screenplay, I wasn't keeping budget in mind as I was writing. I was just writing for the story. This particular story needed these things. And then when after it was written, looking at what it would cost, it was like, okay, shooting this will cost this. And, raising $1.5 million, it was like anywhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million. I can do this,
Right.
This is the low end budget. This is the high end budget. High end in quotes, but still when you've got no money, $500,000, that ain't chump change.
That's right.
So I spent the next year and a half raising money. Never got it. Never got it together. That film never saw the light of day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I spent a lot of effort on that, and it never happened. And a lot of great people were very supportive, including Ray, but still hadn't spoken to him. So after that, did another independent film for like $15,000. It was like, let's just make a movie. So
Right.
we wrote another script, made a movie with next to no money, shot it on short ends and recans on 16 millimeter film. It nearly killed me. It was so hard.
Right.
But we got it done and played the festival circuit a bit with that. And then we're like, okay, well, what's next? And we decided, because that had been a very dark script, let's do something comedic. Let's just have fun, and let's do a short. Let's play the short film festival circuit. So we came up with this short film. It was about a half an hour long, called Pennyweight, and we thought, okay, well, we got to get Ray. We never worked with Ray. We've never even spoken to the man. Let's see if we can get him into Pennyweight. He'd be a great Mr. Pennyweight. We thought of after the fact. We're like, it's a small role. He's only in 3 scenes, but Ray would knock it out of the park. So let's reach out to his manager again. We did, and we started the negotiations with his manager, and it took months
Right.
of talking. And finally, I was on the phone with him. He's like, look, Ephraim, Ray's going to do this, okay? But here's what he needs. You got to fly him out first class. You got to put him in a hotel. And he just had this list of stuff. Because Ray was coming out to do it for no pay.
That's unbelievable.
We had no money to pay him.
Right.
Everyone was donating their time. And so we're like, okay, fly him first class. Absolutely, we will do that. I hung up. I'm like, how the hell are we going to do that? Yeah, how expensive it is to fly someone first class. We had gotten the ticket cost donated from a local travel agency back when travel agencies still were a thing.
Right.
And we're like, well, it's just coach or whatever, So we managed to get an upgrade ticket donated.
Oh, nice.
Because it would have been another like $2,000.
Right.
So we got his upgrade donated, and thankfully Ray was okay with like going with a voucher. And is it gonna work? Is it not gonna work?
Oh, right.
It was dicey there for a little bit, and his manager was kind of pissed. But Ray was just a gentleman. He showed up. He was a joy to be around, and very gracious. Came to set. We only shot with him one day. We did all 3 scenes in one day, and he just showed us what acting is. He showed us what working with a professional is. He's like, showed up, and he wasn't just on time and professional and poised. When he did the scenes, he threw out business that we had never even conceived of. He was like, I'm going to just play around a little bit. We're like, oh, okay, I want to see this. And he just made it better. He made everything better. You didn't have to direct him. You didn't have to be like, okay, Ray, that was good, but let's try it. No, he showed you what it was.
Right.
You're like, oh, thank you. And that's, I really think at least half of good directing is good casting.
Oh, without a doubt.
If you get the right person in there, they will just become what you need.
And then the trick as a director is get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Direct enough so you're getting the scene, but that's what an actor does. That's, and a really good actor, you'll be like, we probably should turn the camera on.
Right.
That's probably all we need to do at this point. I was just going to say real quick, Hollywood gets a bad rap a lot of times for the personalities, but you have guys like Ray Wise, and there's a lot of people like Ray Wise who are just like, yeah, let's do this. And those people are really important in the business because it's because you realize it's not a closed box. It feels like it's a closed box a lot of times, but somebody like a guy like Ray will be like, yeah, and he's a killer actor, and you like to have somebody say, yeah, I'll go on your whim. That's pretty spectacular.
It is, and now, I was a huge fan, and I'm still a huge fan of Ray Wise.
Right.
But every time I ask him if I have a film, and I'm like, Ray, I'd love to have you in this, he always says yes.
That's fantastic.
He always shows up. So basically, that's my story of my break. That was the moment where I was like, okay, and very much like we were saying before, it was a contest. Where the sort of the sell of the contest is we're going to pluck you out of relative obscurity and we're going to launch your career and you're never going to look back.
Right. I cannot wait for part 3.
Now I do have one follow-up question.
Yes.
Was that DV camera that you received, was that just like a promotional gift, or was that actually the intention that you were supposed to use it?
I don't know. Because it was never actually stated.
It's a litmus test.
I realized after the fact it was never stated. No one ever said you have to shoot this. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, maybe it was just a gift. Or like in case you don't have $500,000 to spend.
It's the ringer.
On your Super 35 millimeter short film entry, you can use this if you're a poor scumbag.
I like how you have to be a scumbag. You can't just be poor. You have to also be a scumbag.
You have to be a scumbag. Yeah, because I think out of all the entries that we saw, we were the only ones who used it. I think.
That's also winning. You're like, you know what? We'll shoot a kick-ass movie with your little camera. Just give it to it. That's pretty great.
And I have to apologize to any of the other finalists from season 2 of Project Greenlight if I've misrepresented how things happened.
And they were Mr. Spielberg and
exactly.
Yeah.
No, they're all great people, and they deserve better.
Well, and the other part of that too, it was their chance at a big break too. So they did what they felt was appropriate too. I should probably talk in the microphone. That's what we have here. But so I don't blame them. They're trying to make the best of their situation also.
Look, if I had the resources to shoot in Super 35 at that time, I'm sure I would have.
Right.
I was just broke,
right.
And I was happy to have this little camera. So it wasn't like I was like, I can't believe I could have shot this, with some amazing camera. No, it wasn't that at all.
We should have done this in VistaVision. Why did we not do this?
It really was, a scrounging situation. But yeah, there may have been more director finalists. I think I said there were 3. Maybe there were 5. I can't remember now.
Well, all the drugs.
How it went. It's old age, man. Right. It really is just senility. So, Sean, how about you?
Well, I'll jump in, but quickly. We are an hour 15 in at this point.
I mean, we sort of got a not properly formatted version of your break before we broke into our next chapters. But
that actually,
whatever you want to do, man.
Well,
it's your house.
It's your dime. It's your hour.
Yeah. That's right. People are listening are like, oh God, don't go for another hour. So here's
or it's old business next time.
10 words or less. Go.
After you guys expounded, like, okay, and go. Please keep it haiku form. So I was placed out here by Dave Smith into an internship that was working for Edgar Sherrick, and that link was correct, and I think it's in our show notes. Edgar Sherrick has passed, but he was a giant in his era. And he had kind of 2 distinct careers, maybe even 3, but he created The Wide World of Sports. Do you remember that? And The Agony of Defeat, that's him. But he started off as the head of, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it's ABC. But have you seen The King of Comedy?
No.
With Robert De Niro, it's a Martin Scorsese movie. Anyway, they go to see the studio or the head of the network at the time. That's part of the movie. And that actually is the real head of the network, and that was Edgar at the time. So Edgar's in King of Comedy. But anyway, so my internship was there. Edgar had moved to phase 2 of his life, where he was producing movies of the week, and the guy and he's did a lot of films too. He did the original Ticking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Oh wow.
Like killer, Sleuth, the original Sleuth with Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine. Like cool movies. And one of Mel Gibson's early movies, Mrs. Soulful. Anyway, so I'm there and I'm a PA and I'm in the office, and my mentor Hugh Taylor was sort of my guide through the doings of that. And so I worked in the office and doing office things, picking up the phone, talking to agents. It's interesting, the people I talk to now are like, there's some big names in there now. Like, oh, I probably should have kept track of that. So it was largely fielding phone calls and reading scripts and stuff, and they had a whole room full of scripts, and they passed on some of them. One of them they passed on was Regarding Henry, and it was written by Jeffrey Abrams. Maybe you've heard of him.
I do know that.
Yeah, so it's up there somewhere. But anyway, so the internship was split roughly into 2. And by the way, this is my last semester of college, so my last semester of college was in Los Angeles. So the internship by chance was broken up into two because they were prepping a movie of the week at the time. Now, movies of the week I don't think are around anymore, but every Monday or Tuesday there would be a big movie for the three major networks. I'm old, boy. Three major networks. They're still around. What am I trashing? But anyway.
So with the pyramids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's when we started carving away on the Sphinx. And so I asked if I could go be on set because I really wanted to get into the filmmaking part of it. And the pre-production part, I was kind of too young to appreciate what was going on because I just, get me on a set, you know. But what I actually absorbed was how it's actually done, how a deal comes together. They hired a writer. The guy writing it was in New Zealand, I think. And so we were faxing back and forth pages. I can even tell you what the guy got paid. I still remember to this day what the guy got paid. So they were kind enough to let me go actually be on set. So I was assisting the props at that point. So we're off on this movie set, and we're shooting around town. And it had Patricia Arquette, Mare Winningham, and Steven Weber from Wings. And then Steven Weber they reshot The Shining, and Steven Weber plays the main character, Jack, I think, the main character. Anyway, so that was break-ish, I suppose, but I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to direct and write, And so that job had finished, and they liked me on the set. So one woman who was working, she was set dressing on that show, ended up going on to be the art department coordinator for a movie called True Lies, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis and James Cameron direct, Tom Arnold, and I'm trying to remember who else is in that movie. Anyway, it's sort of a spy thriller thing from the 90s. Got on that, and that is probably the first break because the other one was a placement. I guess that's a break of sorts, but like me getting the thing on my own, and so probably a week or two had gone by, and I got the job, and I ain't gonna lie, it was miserable. It was bad.
Wait, being a PA on that set was miserable?
It was not good. It was not good. What it was a lot of the things that I just learned over time is just kind of that's how the sausage is made. There's a lot of things that happen. You're like, but the educational benefit was gigantic. So, but I ended up meeting a lot of the people in the art department. The production designer was Peter Lamont, who did all the old Bond movies. So that was really cool. I was like, oh, this is awesome. This guy did all Moonraker sets, and I love that stuff growing up. Now Bond has gotten a lot more realistic, but back then it was like crazy gadgets, and sure, we're on the space shuttle, and and that was Jaws. Remember Jaws, the actor? But I got in a fight with the person that hired me.
Whoa.
And I won't really go into any details. Nothing like, sketchy or bad or anything. But
do you mean an argument or a fist fight?
Oh, an argument, not a fist fight. And it was really, I was defending ground that I thought people were being taken advantage of. And whether they were or not, my 20-something-odd-year-old self thought they were, and that's sort of that's a 20-something, the righteous 20-something, so it didn't work out, and so I was fired. And the guys in the art department really liked me, and so I was like, I got let go. And they're like, yeah, we heard. Sorry about that. Like, all right, it's all right. And I had also there was other inklings like, you've really made it when you've been fired. And so part of me was like, I'm in. I am in. So my big break was getting fired, I suppose. But that was really kind of the art department guys were like, come back tomorrow. And this was up in Valencia. They were shooting up at Santa Clarita Studios, and they went up there and they took me out to lunch. And it was so great. I was like, this is so nice of these guys to do this. And some of these guys are like, one guy was really nice to me, and really, really kind of a mentor. His name is Charles Lee, and he went on to build a 3/4 scale Titanic for Titanic down in Rosarito or whatever it was in Mexico. And so, there's some heavy hitting people in this movie, and just were very kind to me, and I haven't forgotten it to this day. It's like the Ray Wise thing, it's like, there's like little sparkly stars out there, man. You just got to grab onto them.
Yeah,
so.
there people complain a lot about the kinds of personalities you run into in this town, but there are some severely nice people.
There are, but I did get fired.
Right.
So, but yes, but there are, and I think that those people keep the passion alive, keep the interest in the because if it was always that, I mean, that would be pretty unbearable. But the fact there is so many people that are just generally love the art form, you know, and are willing to do things like that, spectacular. So I think that's not my visual effects break. That's almost another thing, and we're running long, so I don't know if I should save it for another time.
Our Hollywood break, because mine wasn't a visual effects break either.
Oh, true that. Okay, yeah. So that, I guess at that point, then I had my go back to Michigan after that kind of thing. I didn't go back to Michigan. I did my go back to Michigan staying in Los Angeles, but I essentially did that. But lots of things learned. But I wanted to do one quick thing. I wanted to say one quick thing. An observation that I got when I was on the Movie of the Week, this is before True Lies, that has stayed with me for a long time and reminded me of one of the reasons I got into visual effects, other than the fact that I just had a genuine interest in visual effects itself. The props guy, the property master, was a really talented prop guy. He was in high demand. He also was a really good actor. He really wanted to act. So his day job was props. He could not get hired as an actor because they wanted him as a prop guy. They needed him as a prop guy. He made himself invaluable as a prop guy. So nobody approached him as an actor, which is really what he came out here to do. And that always stayed with me. And I remembered at some point, like, you know, there's a little bit of separation between church and state, between pre-production, production, and post-production, especially production and post-production. There are crossovers. There's, you know, set soups and stuff like that. But I realized that if you want to, especially if we wanted to act in this case, if you want to sort of be considered in an above-the-line capacity, probably easier to not have your day job be below the line, because you are in front of the people all day long that you hope at some point to marshal, if not them directly, that world, you know, you want to hopefully marshal them to do your project. And that's a very hard psychological trick. At least it was in the 90s. I don't know how it is now, but I realized if I want to make money and make a living in filmmaking, I'm going to have to figure out how to get, I'm going to have to be below the line, because everybody's trying to work to get to the above the line. Those are the golden jobs, you know, but meanwhile, you know, rent's due. What do I love in post-production? Because that will keep the firewall between me and the people who would then hire me for above the line stuff, or considered that way.
I think there's definitely that's a concern, but I think working below the line oftentimes is somewhat invisible. When you're talking about the people that you need to impress, or the people who are making decisions, they're rarely looking closely at the below the line folks.
And that's exactly the point.
So,
because you don't want to fall in the trap, if you want to call it a trap. You don't want to fall into the situation that the prop guy fell into and be a spectacular visual effects artist, because they will not be able to see you as a actor or whatever. A director, a little different, because those are closer together. But visual effects and an actor, that's a very unusual thing. And
what visual effects guy is a superstar? Like, who's the indispensable visual effects guy? There are visual effects houses that are amazing.
That's right.
There used to be superstars in visual effects.
And you know what? And that's a fantastic point, whereas there's only one property master on a movie, you know, or I think, you know, but you're right. It is more like one's more a sea of operators, and the other one's an individual on a movie set who's doing. So yeah,
but the casting directors aren't hanging around movie sets looking at property masters thinking, I'll never cast that guy.
No, but I can tell you, like, eyes are always open on a set. Sure. You know, if a PA does something funny or stands out or something, you'll get noticed. And I don't mean that don't do your job, you know, but people have their eyes open on a set, and if somebody does a little funny thing or something, you know, that's not forgotten. You know, a director will think, I can plug that in somewhere. And that happened to me on the Movie of the Week. I got thrown in front of the camera on the Movie of the Week. And that was my realization, like, at that, now keep in mind, this might be an isolated situation. This was my takeaway at that moment and in that time in this particular scenario. So maybe it's different, you know?
Well, there's a famous example of, on Twin Peaks, the pilot episode, which was more or less of a Movie of the Week, and then it got turned into a series.
Right.
When they were shooting that, they were blocking out or looking at different locations in Laura Palmer's house. They were in her bedroom, and the set designer or set dresser this guy Bob Silva or Frank Silva he was kind of crouching down so he would not be seen. Like he was like in there working. David Lynch came in to check the place out, and he kind of crouched down to not be in the way. And David Lynch was so taken by this image of this long-haired fellow in a jean jacket crouching down at the end of Laura's bed that he's like, "You're gonna be that guy. You're gonna be that malevolent presence in her life." And he got cast as Bob.
You know, that happens, and that's the thing is like, yeah, but it's an unusual. It's also, I don't know, because I was about to contradict myself, and maybe I will, but maybe I will. But it is more, in some ways it's very strict. The lines are very strict between jobs, but things like that happen. That's sort of the fluidity of a production. Now here's the thing is, I don't know that would happen as much now with the high stakes games that are being played, like the Avenger movies and stuff like that. That may still happen. Somebody shows up and like, oh, send them over to costume and let's get them rigged up.
Yeah, you're not going to suddenly become Ultron because you were on the set.
That's not how James Spader got that job.
I know he was working the craft service table, and they're like, I like your voice.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
the way he laid out like the M&Ms and then the the dip and
and he could
sense.
talk you into eating things you didn't want to eat just because he had such a charming voice.
I'm not going with it.
Oh dear. But my feeling is that if you're working a production job or a below the line job and you want to be doing something else, you have to devote a certain amount of your time and your life to that thing.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You can't just do that and hope to get discovered. That's never going to happen.
Spielberg had a great quote that I remember hearing when I was probably a teenager. He was being interviewed and they're like, what do you say to young people who want to make films that want to be directors? And he was like, if you want to make movies, you got to make movies.
Right. It's not any more complicated than that.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. It's not easy.
Conceptually,
it's
not
simple, not easy.
Exactly right. Yeah. And there starts the journey.
Right.
It's like there you go. I think people think that there is that magical formula or spell that gets you into Hollywood, and I don't know. I mean, that's kind of one of the points that we wanted to do this is there is no one way in.
Persistence is, I think, a key.
Right. And I also think too, persistence is helpful if you have a passion beyond making it, quote unquote. Is like that will get you through the long hours when it gets tough. You're like, I just really like to do this, or I really like this thing. It's like that'll get you through the night.
And speaking of getting you through the long hours, I think we should wrap this up.
We should. Yeah, we're long.
Claw its way out of you.
Well,
What? I don't know what you
we
were
should have just
saying.
ended right on that and let it claw its way out of you.
Well, thank you for listening to another one of our podcasts. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
10 Giant Robots is created and distributed by the 10 Giant Robots Radio Network in beautiful downtown Burbank, California. Our theme music was created by the incredibly talented Shane Knight. Follow us on Twitter at 10 Giant Robots or at 10giantrobots.com.